We want to help everyday people be inspired and equipped to be disciple makers in today's culture. We think there are more and more people who want to make disciples of Jesus, and we want to help you so that you can. Welcome to today's Disciple Maker. All right, everybody, welcome back to today's Disciple Maker podcast. Pleased to be joined once again by Tim Doherty. Tim, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be back here talking with you. I love these conversations with you.
Always a blast. Mm-hmm. And so you were away for the last conversation, but really we've taken a turn in the subject matter, I suppose, or the approach that we're taking, the angle to these conversations. We're now looking at some of these ideas. What are the things, the experiences of disciples in contemporary context here in Canada, 2024? What are some of the things that we're experiencing here in our society that detract or get in the way from living the life that Jesus has called us into as his disciples? And so in the last conversation, I was joined by Bria Wong Armstrong, and we got into some kind of broad stroke dichotomies that are very pervasive within our society, all of which hard to kind of put a single title to, but a lot of them have really this essence of control and this desire that we as human beings very much have to control and perhaps protect ourselves rather than rely on the Lord, and how pervasive that is, especially here in our Canadian context, I suppose. And so one of the things that I've loved about bringing new guests onto the show, having different people, is really we can ask the same questions and get such a variety and a richness and diversity of answers that come from different experiences and different perspectives. And so ultimately, we're asking the same question today that we asked in the last conversation. What are the things in our contemporary context that get in the way of living life as disciples of Jesus? And so if you're able to kind of summarize it, what would be your thought initially on that?
Well, what comes to mind has to do with control, and then I'm starting to think the things we're going to talk about today might have to do with some things that might be surprising to us, that are well beyond our control, that are having a powerful influence on us. But before we go there, I want to ask you a question. Okay. Tell me about a couple of your most recent purchases. Okay. Something small, or you would consider small, and something bigger. What'd you buy?
Yeah. Okay. Off the top of my head, most recently, I guess small. My wife and I did a spontaneous Wendy's trip last night.
Okay.
Yes.
Favorite item on the menu?
Junior cheeseburger deluxe. Can't fail. She goes sweet every time, but
seriously, that's the same in my family. There's at least two people that's what they're going to order.
Yeah. So she's always there for dessert. No matter what time of night, I'm there for food.
Random question connected to that. How do you prefer to pay? Are you a tapper? Are you a swiper? Are you a cash? You tap. Okay.
Yeah. I haven't had cash in a while. Do you still carry cash?
Yeah. No, not really.
Okay. Yeah.
Something big.
Yeah, big. We just bought our barbecue on Monday.
Congratulations.
So that's been exciting. Haven't even used it yet, but it does work. Turned it on.
It's time. It's going to be it's going to be great.
Yeah. So those are the two that come to mind. I want to ask, why do you ask? But I'm going to ask you first. What are some for you?
Recent smaller parts. I was thinking about this because I knew I was going to ask you this question. I don't think I didn't buy anything today. I didn't buy anything yesterday, which is cool to me anyways. So I feel like my last smaller purchase was like a tank of gas, and that's not small anymore.
Not small these days. Yeah.
And a bigger thing would have been once or twice a year I go and buy clothes. I bought these pants. Nice. I bought some other things that went with it, and that felt good. It was kind of a date with my wife, and then
cool. Yeah.
Spent a little more money. Why I'm asking is our current experience of buying things, I suspect, is quite different from how it felt to buy something even 50 years ago, let alone 150 years ago, let alone 500 years ago, or in the time of Jesus. And I don't want to go deep into a theology of money or whatever. We might go there in this conversation, right, a little bit. But what it's got me thinking, connecting to, is the experience or the satisfaction we get or can get from just being able to tap. Or while I was watching, I was together with a group of guys, sort of an offshoot of our Beulah community at Super Bowl time. offshoot, as in a few guys said, hey, let's watch the Super Bowl. Let's ask a number of our friends from work and so on. And we do. And there's a couple of football fans in the midst. The rest are just there for, hanging out with the guys. Yeah. But of course, there's the ads. And we looked it up before the show. $7 million it now costs to buy 30 seconds at the Super Bowl.
Goodness.
And the app, the shopping app, Temu, they were on at least 3 times. And I'm sure those were minute ads, not 30-second ads. So that would have been $14 million a pop. And what's their slogan? Temu.
You had to tell me. So
shop like a billionaire. Yeah. Shop like a billionaire. And I thought, how perfect. Because to me, I'm more than 30 years old. I'm more than 40 years old. I've been around a little longer. And I can remember eras where if you'd say to a younger person, who do you want to be like? Or who do you think is amazing? Mm-hmm. Decades ago, that might have been a pop star or a rock music personality.
Sure.
There was an era for sure it was movie stars. Right? And there's still some of those will be prominent, but I think a rising star, to use that language in these days, is the billionaire. And the, so Temu, a shopping app, which I downloaded just to see, what is this? Oh yeah, my goodness, like the bazillions of products that are on there, and I didn't even try to get in. I'm sure it works great. And it's like free shopping all over the place. And of course, it's going to curate to the kind of person you are. And there's an experience that today's global citizen wants. I want to be able to buy anything. Yeah. I want it here, now.
Right. Yeah.
And I want it to be easy. Look at me. I shop like a billionaire. Mm-hmm. And I was introduced to some ideas, and I said at the beginning there, the contrast between control and things that are out of our control. Yeah. And there's a podcast that I listen to called Rebuilders. They're out of Australia. And Mark Sayers and a couple of his friends. He's a great thinker, a follower of Jesus. And one thing he does well, I think, is look at the macro shifts and changes in our culture and what are the implications for trying to make disciples. So we got today's kind of main idea or ideas from him, but I want to unpack them for Canadian context.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah. So this billionaire thing, how did we get to a day when, the billionaire, like that's the person that captures people's imagination, or certainly one of the prominent people. There's this gathering that people might hear about in the news, Davos, Switzerland. There's an annual gathering in Davos. And there was a book released just last year called Davos Man, How Billionaires Devoured the World. And it's a deep journey. And I want to read actually from the intro to the book. The billionaires gather at Davos, Switzerland to propose the world's solutions, independent of governments. Leaders from business, governments, civil society, faith groups, media, academia, and the arts. Billionaires travel the world and then gather at Davos to say, you know what, governments are governments, but we're the ones who actually make the world happen. We're the ones who actually solve the big problems that are facing humanity. Yeah. And to me, I think the billionaire today represents the ultimate free person. But where did this come from? Yeah. And what I've learned is something like 70-ish years ago, in the world of the middle of the 20th century, the world had experienced 2 world wars that were in part caused by these nations, independent nations that made up their own mind, we're going to invade so-and-so, we're going to go over here, and it destabilized the world. Right. And so some economists thought, here's an idea. Today we assume that globalization is a thing. Maybe it's a great achievement of the 20th century into the 21st century. It's actually, if you like, the brainchild of these economists in the middle of the 20th century saying, if we could just monetize everything, and if we could break down trade barriers between nations, then everybody, I'm using my own language, everybody be like a customer of everybody else. Yeah. And then it would be harder for any one part of the world to destabilize the whole, because everybody's is dependent on one another, is in trading with one another. Right. And a result of that is what's now called neoliberalism, which is an unfettered market. Like, we believe that everything should be, like, it should be easy to buy, it should be easy to trade, there should be less government restrictions, all that on business.
Got it.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Any questions so far?
No, I was going to ask what neoliberalism is.
Yeah,
but
neoliberalism.
Okay. All right.
And a result of that then is that for the millennials, people who are coming of adult age at the turn of the century, I recognize this in some people in my family that I know quite well. It's like the ultimate dream. I can now see it in the next generation, Gen Z. It's like the ultimate version of being a human being. My best life would be me being able to travel anywhere I want, stay there for as long as I want, till either my money runs out or I get bored.
Right.
And then I go on to the next place.
Right.
And a result of that is I feel like I'm a citizen of the world. Wouldn't use that language, but I'm a person who can go anywhere. Oh, isn't that cool? I met some people from Germany, and then I met some people from Tanzania, and then I met from, and yet the ideal would be that you could travel without restriction anywhere.
Yeah.
You could buy without restriction. You could shop like a billionaire. And you would be the ultimate free person.
Yeah.
That is actually the result of the era of neoliberalism.
Okay.
The era where we said we need an unfettered market. We need to, and ultimately that it becomes that everything is monetized, even experiences are monetized, and so on.
Right.
But this results in some significant problems
Yeah.
for human beings generally, and for trying to be a disciple.
Yeah. And okay. And so something that strikes me as you say all that, you opened with a comment about how younger people, what they would aspire to, how that has evolved over time, and what that used to be versus now, likely the billionaire or something like that. One of the thoughts that I have is movie star, pop star, rock star, sure. I think you go back not that far, but far enough, it seems to me that like things like president are in the mix, stuff like that.
Right.
And so just as I'm reflecting on what you're sharing, it seems like there has been this shift where in some ways we used to perhaps aspire to these meaningful positions, that we would do this or we would do that and contribute in some way, or it would be meaningful to people or something like that. But based on what you're describing, it sounds like there's this shift where now what we aspire to most has nothing to do with anybody else. We don't want to contribute much. We're looking for a personal freedom. And
I don't want to, by these conversations, we don't want to get mean and critical and so on.
Sure,
I actually, my intention with this is I just want to, when I saw these themes of things like the outcomes in our lives, I got a little bit upset.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like back to that first idea of control versus not in control. Here were things that were like, are the outcomes of decades long of intentionality on the part of economists.
Yeah.
Maybe out of an attempt to solve a problem. Oh, rogue nations, Germany now goes Nazi and wants to invade, the next neighboring countries. They say, oh, we'll solve that with economics. We'll make everybody trade with everybody. We'll and of course, that's not ultimately been achieved, but globalization was a very real thing by the 80s, and it was flourishing by the 90s, and by the aughts, it was like that was a normal thing.
Yeah.
And now you've got Temu. I can just swipe and tap and whatever else. Amazon, things are coming to me from around the world. But the outcomes of things that have happened for human beings are rather, what's an unhappy state? And I'll name them.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And that's, I guess that's exactly what I'm getting to. And the question is what is it that has happened in our society as a result of all of these decades that has made maybe our highest craving, just to be free and to have ease, to seek that release?
Well, yeah. I think this pairs, and there'd be another whole conversation we might have later about the emergence of individualism as a thing, like the individual versus the collective, and so on. And there's just the power of that. And I think there have been successive eras of the productive individual many decades ago, and other versions of that. But individualism as a concept of I am my own person really emerged out of some romantic thinkers back in the 18th century, that then further psychology thinkers and so on. And I think that paired with this economic experiment in the middle of the 20th century, you bring those two streams together and you've got the monetization of everything and the the continual rise of the concept of the person is, I am my own person.
Mm-hmm.
I'll invent me. I will curate my life. Oh, thank you, Timu. I can just tap, tap, tap.
Yeah.
And of course, we've known algorithms and so on for not that long, less than 10 years.
Yeah.
But of course, it's going to suggest things to me that I'm going to like. And since I bought these pants, I've probably bought some other things that will go with that, right? And we could think, oh, that's good for me. It kind of feeds my idea of self and being able to curate myself. But at least 3 negative outcomes are, we've been atomized as human beings. We've been atomized. We can get into that.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is we are being seduced at mass scale.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is this collision of high performance and exhaustion.
Right.
And then a counter reaction to that, then anti-exhaustion. And all 3 of those, atomization, seduction at mass scale, and high performance and exhaustion, all those are in direct conflict with trying to be a disciple of Jesus.
Okay.
And they are outcomes, this long opening, and they're all outcomes of the neoliberalism experiment, and where we've now arrived with like the billionaire is the person we want to be, and we've been able to shop like a billionaire.
Right. Yeah.
See how that fits together?
Yeah.
It's economics that got us here, together with some individualism.
Yeah.
And we said, oh, that's great. I'll be able to buy anything. I'll be able to travel anywhere. I am the ultimately free person.
Yeah.
But what it's resulting is we're atomized, seduced, and exhausted.
Okay. I am going to ask you about those 3 in particular, and atomized, not a term that I think is thrown around too often these days. So we'll circle back. I'm curious to know. But one of the things just that strikes me out of the gate, unique in this conversation, underlying theme does seem to be that money is involved heavily in a lot of what we're talking about here. And so just to look to the words of Jesus, one of the things that I found so interesting in reflection preparing for this episode is that when Jesus is talking about, really what he's talking about is this idea of exclusive and sole devotion to him. Mm-hmm. And this idea that we can't serve 2 masters. That's not how this is going to work. But what struck me is that, I mean, he could have chosen any number of things, I would think, for what this other master might be that we might attempt to serve. But interestingly, to me at least, the one that he chose is money. You cannot serve God and money. And so is there, without going too far down the road into kind of what is theology of money, because I do think that's probably a conversation of its own, but what is it about money that makes it such a competitor for our affection and our attention and our devotion?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I bet there's people listening who would have a few thoughts about that. What occurs to me today connects with, well, you talked about the previous episode, you were talking about control or a desire for control and how that, shows up in a variety of ways. Mm-hmm. There is a sense, as we're talking even right now, about your ability to buy a barbecue, my ability to buy new pants, pay for my gasoline doesn't feel nearly as satisfying, but of course, I need it to be able to travel, at least in the vehicle that I drive right now. But there is something just embedded in the capacity to purchase that I think leverages power beyond me.
Yeah, okay.
And made in the image of God and tarnished or marred by sin and brokenness, but made in the image of God, I do have power, and I am made to have agency and power. Right. But tarnished by sin, I want to extend that power in as many directions as I can. What do I want? I want pleasure. I want me. I'm naturally self-oriented. And if I'm now, because of both these ideologies, if I can use that word, individualism and neoliberalism, right? The age of the billionaire is what we've inherited. Then what would I want if I could have something that could give me the ability to just tap, 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 go, go, go. Like, look at how fast I can accumulate pleasure, comfort, experiences that are like, I can go on a roller coaster, whatever else, right? I feel so alive. I am so in control. I have so much power, and money gives me that power to leverage that. Yeah. If I have enough, if only could if only I could have more. oh, imagine what it would be like to be a billionaire.
Yeah. Right.
Right? That's how that's all connected.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so then if we're talking about this age of neoliberalism where it is the monetization of everything, if at the root of maybe our sin nature, fallenness in humanity is this desire to extend our control and our agency, dominion maybe. If everything has been monetized, then money is the answer to being able to do that infinitely.
Right.
And so, okay, so if that's where we are today, I'm just curious then, because Jesus seemed to speak of money as being a core issue or quote unquote rival to his devotion to him. Would that be equally true in his day, do you think? Or is that something that we are experiencing more and more?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I don't know what it felt like because I didn't live there. What did it feel like to try to buy bread or pay taxes or build a house and the materials it cost? To buy them, the cost it was to buy the materials to build your house. I think it is more challenging today. I think it's, how can I know for sure?
Right.
If I just look at how powerful, go back to where we started, right? These apps that I can use and how easy it is for me to buy.
Yeah, right.
It feels like money has even more opportunity maybe today. And the assumptions we developed over the last 70 years, the assumptions we developed that then result in a millennial turning the century or a Gen Z today going, oh yeah, the best. Well, of course I should, not only could I, but I should be able to go wherever I want and buy whatever at whatever convenience. And so shop like a billionaire is a perfect slogan. So is it a bigger issue today than it was? I don't know how big of a hold on people's heart it had then, but it sure seems like it's more
readily
dense
available.
of an issue, more readily available today.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right then. So, 3 kind of key words that you presented maybe as kind of how this has now unfolded in our experience. I'm going to see if I can get them. Atomization, seduction, and exhaustion.
Yes.
I heard you say those.
Yes.
Let's start with atomization. I think I get the idea, but if shed some light on, maybe clarify what we mean by that. What does that look like? And then, what is it that we're seeing today?
Before we get into the unpacking of those 3 issues, if you like, outcomes, here was something more that's interesting in terms of the, how do we get to such a prevalent of an issue? You did ask that question, how did it become so prevalent? And it was this idea shared with me again from another source. Actually, it's this book called Strange New World by, what's his name? Carl Trueman. And he gives us the image of an apple falling from the tree. And there are the necessary preconditions for the apple to fall from the tree, and the sufficient preconditions. You don't need to remember what those terms are. They're philosophy terms. But what's interesting is in the implications is just to see, you first have to have some things in place before, and then you get the next things, and then you get a new reality. So in order for an apple to fall from the tree, you first have to have what? You have to have a ripe apple, which means you had to have sunshine. You have to have gravity. You say, well, yeah, of course. Those are necessary preconditions before an apple can fall from the tree. Okay. You got to have sunshine that ripens the apple. The apple ripens. There's chemistry going on in there. And then you got to have gravity in order for it to fall. Right. Sufficient preconditions are but those things alone don't typically cause the apple to fall. There needs to be a gust of wind, or somebody shakes the tree, or somebody actually picks it. Yeah. Those are the sufficient preconditions in order to now have the reality of the apples on the ground or the apples in your hand. How does that play forward into what we're dealing with here? We had to first have the idea that a person was an individual before we could have individualism. You first had to have the idea that everything should be monetized before you actually would want to monetize everything. And now today, then technology, I talk about the Temu app, makes it possible that I can shop like a billionaire, et cetera. But I had to first want that. I had to desire that I could operate as an individual, autonomous of everybody.
Yeah.
And I would have to want that the most satisfying thing that I could have would be comforts, conveniences, experiences, rather than you talked about many decades ago. I would want to live a meaningful life. I would contribute the idea of president or leader or doctor or whatever. I want to be a great mom because I want to invest in the next generation. Whatever it is that would capture your imagination before, you'd have to have a different set of ideas first in place. And then when you bring the technology that makes it possible,
got it. Yeah.
It explodes. Why do I say all that? I have a cell phone, you have a cell phone. We can't merely blame our current state of affairs on the fact that we have smartphones. Right. We just get rid of those things. Well, the technology, but now we have the collective desire, we'll just find another way.
Right.
Why? Because I'm supposed to be an individual that curates my own life.
Yeah.
That came from an idea that preceded all the technology. And, or we'd have to have a relatively wealthy middle class around the world compared to history, who would then be able to buy far more clothes than they need, would be able to have 2 cars instead of a horse, whatever else, right? Right? And then the technology and then the economic wealth makes the things possible. But the necessary preconditions were just the idea that we would want to have those things. That would even be the definition of an individual.
Yeah.
Anyways, that sets us up to then go into these problems, because then we can look at what were the ideas behind the things, and then what was the technology or the thing that put it over the edge? What was the hand that picked the apple from the tree?
Right.
What was the gust of wind that then put it over the edge?
Yeah.
Does that making some sense?
It does. It does. And in the last conversation with Bria, we closed with this picture of the garden and a brief just exploration. What was going on there? What did we see within ourselves in the garden that we now continue to see within ourselves? Right. And so if I'm understanding correctly, I think in a lot of ways, you look at the garden and you look at the motivating factors that led to the fall. I want to be the one in control. I want to call shots. I want to exert dominion.
Yep.
Necessary conditions is just kind of this sin nature that resides within individuals. It resides within us now, but it seems to have been with us from the beginning. And perhaps now we're in a day and age where we now have these sufficient conditions that have now enabled that nature to rear its head in all new ways.
In all new ways. And so I'm not pretending that our era is, the most challenging to be a disciple of Jesus. We're just trying to look at what do we have today.
Yeah.
And that was just a brief sidebar into understand that first there's got to be a way of thinking that started somewhere. Somebody had an idea. Somebody started to propose. These economists in the middle of the 20th century said, here's the problem, destabilization of the world.
Sure.
Here's the way that we'd like to solve it. Yeah. That was an idea first.
Yeah.
And then decades later, you get the possibility where governments are changing tariffs. What's coming out of that economic theory, that's then, and then you've got technologies of shipping and technologies of communication. And then you've got Amazon figures and Walmart figure out whole new ways to organize inventory and to move it around the map. Those are sufficient conditions now that allow us to go, this is great. We're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
We're just going, great, I got this app. Tap, 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 tap.
Right, exactly.
So atomization.
Atomization.
You had a question.
What is atomization?
Sometimes I've got an old-fashioned kind of affinity for things. I think if I went into my grandmother's, if I happened to peek through her bedroom door, I would see on the top. I'm there now in my imagination, and I can see on the dresser top there's a perfume dispenser. It's very pretty glass, and then on the top there's this bulb.
Okay.
And you squeeze the bulb.
Yeah.
And as she would squeeze, I didn't use her perfume.
We're not allowed. Okay.
She would squeeze the bulb. It would atomize the liquid inside and take it from liquid into all these little droplets.
Yeah, droplets, right? Sure.
We have, as a result of this era, been atomized. We've been atomized. We've been taken from a collective not only collective understanding, but a collective identity, a collective experience of being human beings, at least in the Western world, more collective, more community, into more of an atomized reality.
Right. Interesting. And that's something that it really does seem like there's two sides to, because I can immediately see where the issue arises. We talk about things like algorithms. We can be picked out very individually and exploited individually, maybe if we were to go that far. But at the same time, we place such an immense value, certainly within the church, and more, I think, within society, on the unique aspects and attributes of each person and the value that those uniquenesses have. And so, there seems to be a tension there. The atomization, on one hand, I could see it as being good, that we're becoming more and more aware that each individual is an individual to themselves, and we're not just this, the melting pot, so to speak, if that was the phrase that was going around for a long time. But in terms of how we're seeing it play out in this world and the challenge that it does present to being a disciple, what would you speak to there?
Well, and it's interesting, you touched on, without even being aware of it, I think, is that in a previous era of the understanding of the individual, the great fear in the middle of the 20th century would have been, I'm just a cog in the machine. I want to be seen and valued as a person, not just somebody and that was the age of industrialization, mass production, and so on. And a person who got work, many people just became cogs in the machine. And so it was a response or a reaction to that. The 1960s, 70s, there was like this rising of the creative expression of the individual. Today, individualism has gone even further forward in the power of the individual to not only pay for anything and buy anything, and today from anywhere, and should be here by tomorrow, right? It's kind of the way the expectation we have, but also be able to travel anywhere and so on. But a few results of that is we end up being rootless people who don't belong anywhere, and aren't attached really to anyone. I'm just me, buying a life, buying experiences, looking for the next one. Oh, but look at how free I am, right? I can go anywhere and be anybody and whatever else. And so people around us, I'd say more subconsciously, come to be like, I will use this place and use these people for as long as it supports my current idea of what my life should be like, and then I'll move on.
Right.
And that's debilitating, actually, it's not only debilitating for the ways of Jesus and what he would intend. Made in the image of God, Father, Son, Spirit is plural. It's three, right? It's three persons in one, if you want to call it community. But it's also debilitating to I'd say, the contemporary soul. And what are societies now recognizing, at least in the Western world, rising loneliness, falling sense of my actual meaningful contribution in the world. Because I bought into this idea of individualism that I should be able to, everything's monetized and I can just buy everything. So I bought into that, and I ended up just a molecule floating on the breeze.
And so, excuse me. I think we're touching on it. It's such a subtle difference, but I think of the picture of the body again. This came up in the last conversation, but the picture of the body and how to each has been given gifts for the building up of the body. And maybe that's the difference is now in this age of atomization, it's individualism for the sake of the individual rather than God's design, which appears to be individualism, if you use the same word, for the sake of the body.
Individual members, what does Romans 12:4 or 5 say? You are individually members of one another. So it does use the word individually, identifying you're unique, but you exist for the collective well-being.
Yeah.
The economy we're in says the very opposite.
Right.
No, you exist in order to be sold something.
Yeah.
To satisfy your...
To gratify yourself.
To gratify your latest cravings.
Right. Wow. Okay. Okay. On to the next one, I suppose. Seduction.
Seduction at scale, right? So today is the age of, and I, what was I watching? Oh, I'm Super Bowl again. This came up, but it also comes up now in plenty of NHL games. If anybody watches hockey, hardly anybody listening probably listens to hockey. Canadians.
In April,
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Betting apps. Of course, consumerism. Of course, streaming media. My goodness, like this has become a growing frustration for me on a Friday night or Saturday night. Hey, it's an old idea, I suppose. Let's watch a movie. In my old assumption, it shouldn't be that hard to find one because we know the kinds of movies we like. It can become exhausting.
Yeah.
So
right.
How many options there are. And if you're not somebody who consumes, there's that word, I'm going to consume an experience.
Yeah.
Consume media through my television, then I'm going to do it through my device.
Yeah.
And that's got constant options times a million from how many different places.
Mm-hmm.
And the aim, of course, behind it, the architects of that, really what's on market now is your attention.
Right.
That's what's being sold.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get Caleb's attention for as many minutes today as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to sell that attention to the people who want to sell you something.
Right.
That's insidious.
Yeah.
And we are then being seduced. The seduction idea, the use of that word is, and not only, of course, the light from your phone, but even just the images, the excitement, the allure of what you're seeing or what you're being presented with is aimed to seduce you in order to keep you there or bring you back.
Yeah.
Right? And that, of course, then, as a disciple of Jesus, is competing with my love for him, my devotion to him.
Wow. And so on that one, do you hand in hand with the atomization, or is it a unique kind of?
Well, I think atomization is the isolation of human beings from one another, and seduction is now the control of your right, trying to get access your appetites. And here's the thing, when so many resources that you have are limited, but you have no limit to feelings.
Yeah.
Your feelings, my feelings, are like an unlimited resource that now someone is trying to mine those.
Right.
So what am I fed in my social media feed? Things that the algorithm knows that I find interesting, exciting, whatever else, right?
Right.
And if I can be taken on an emotional journey, then I'm having feelings that are being mined. I am being seduced by the architects of this. Why? So that my attention can be held, so that I can be offered something again to buy.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. And so now tying it back to Jesus, as we're always going to try and do, the thing that came to mind is, when Jesus is going to be tempted, seduced by the devil, what happens first is he's led away into isolation to be by himself.
Oh, yeah.
And that seems to be the place where the enemy really, it's kind of prime time, maybe, so to speak.
Right.
That's when he really seems to want to make his move. And where seduction tends to, come to a new level of sorts. And
interesting. That connects for me as both, positively speaking, solitude with God,
and that's where
is an incredibly important and powerful influence in our lives. Yeah. But solitude away from God is a prime opportunity for the tempter.
Yeah, exactly.
And he knows it.
Yeah, he knows it, and and I wonder if sometimes he doesn't, because the thing that I always find so interesting is Jesus is led away by the Spirit into the wilderness. And so he has not gone out alone.
Right.
But it appears as isolation.
Right.
And perhaps even to the view of the enemy, he thought, oh, this is my opportunity. Little did he know. But yeah, and so maybe for listeners today, disciples today, yeah, what does that look like in a world where we do, connected as we are, so often alone? How do we operate in a way where we truly aren't alone and we are able to readily and kind of continually practice solitude with God? And so when these things come.
Yeah, well, I think as we talk it out, the combination of these things is I find myself as an individual that the narrative around me says you should not only do you have the we are oppressed no longer by the shoulds of other people in the system because we long ago rebelled against that. We're now oppressed by all the things we could do. What might I miss out on? That actually begins to oppress me.
Right.
And so as an individual, I'm just like alert and awake and concerned, stressed that what am I going to miss out on? Oh, I better buy that thing that's being pushed to me, and so on. And the power of those, and so then what I'm left with is, but who really understands me? Where do I really belong? Is anybody actually for me?
Yeah.
Who could guide me? All of that is lost when I've been atomized, and we're again seduced. We're seduced into believing that the place where I feel most alive, because of these emotions that I'm fed,
right,
would be in front of my little screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's where I experience the tides of emotions, excitement, thrill. Anyways, the variety of emotions that I can experience through movies, through various things that I'm fed through my own personal screen, which then of course is just an illusion that.
Yeah.
And it's a what's the word? It's a replacement, or it's a counterfeit for the real thing.
Right. Wow. Okay. The third one
was exhaustion.
Exhaustion is does that kind of continue along, or a new direction? Perhaps?
Yeah, I think it continues along in that. So having been atomized and seduced, we now are left thinking back with the imagination of who's the person who has ultimate freedom. It's the billionaire, and I'm now fed that the idea that I should optimize myself. And people look for life hacks and how can I be
the way to get there.
This is the way to get there. I'm going to be the best version of me, and so on.
Yeah.
But of course, as time has accumulated for people who are in pursuit of that dream and that attempt, people are just finding I can't be awesome at everything, and people are slumping into exhaustion. I think the pandemic compounded that, right? How hard we all had to try to figure things out, and so then. Both exhaustion, but then the reaction against exhaustion. Now you have anti-exhaustion, like I just need to chill. How common is that word now? I just need to chill. That's anti-exhaustion speaking.
Yeah,
we've been exhausted by trying to optimize ourselves, hack life and hack our bodies, and etc. And again, that gets in the way of the life of being a disciple.
Right.
Because to build the kingdom is to be somebody who's going to put out effort.
Yeah.
But I'm just exhausted from all the offers I'm made, all the things I'm trying to be amazing at, and I just can't.
Yeah.
So you and I, if we would say to our friend, who's also a disciple of Jesus, hey, come and be in community with us, and let's serve, and let's contribute. Let's see if together we could see the kingdom come in our neighborhood. And he goes, man, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I just need to chill.
Yeah.
Give me my screen, give me my Timo app, give me whatever else, right?
Right. Wow. Okay, and so then the wonderful invitation of Jesus, I think, is what comes to mind immediately. This idea that he offers rest. Come to me. And so, what does that look like for us then in this day and age where we live in this time where we are just bombarded? What does it look like to find our our rest in him, to have our eyes fixed on him, so we're not have our affections and our attentions drawn away to these other things.
Yeah. Well, I think these three outcomes, if you like, of this era that we've been in, they are creating friction and they're creating challenge. That was what typically gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
Typically gets in the way. You're being atomized, you're being seduced, you're getting exhausted from trying to, perform in everything. Jesus' way then, of course, is come together, choose to come together, choose to be together, choose to belong to one another.
Yeah.
That's life in community.
Right.
We've said it before, but it's not just a nice thing to add on. You need it. You need it.
Yeah,
you need it,
desperately.
and the rest of humanity needs it.
Yeah.
Atomization is not going to take us forward as a human race, and it's not going to take you forward in ultimately being a satisfied, thriving human being made in the image of God. Seduction, the reality of seduction is we're continually offered off-ramps from being a disciple of Jesus. And it's like I said a moment ago, it used to be that you felt oppressed by what you should do, and now you're more oppressed by the things that you could do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, all these options that you have. And today, Mark Sayers, that podcast I mentioned, he said something like, you are less, the issue that you hear is not, you need to leave behind those things in order to pursue Jesus. You're more likely to hear, pursue Jesus and all of those other things.
Yeah.
Right? And so that then creates friction and obstacles. Okay, well, so it's the perpetual yes. It's like everything is saying yes to me. So I'm trying to include my life with Jesus as one amongst many things. So the first one was, in the face of atomization, choose community, choose relationship, choose to be attached, choose not to try to say yes to hundreds of people, say yes to a few. In the face of that seduction and all those off-ramps and all those yeses, this is a life of choosing simplicity or simplifying your life, right? It's being conscious of these are all, are they pretend loves? Or what would you say if Jesus is love and he's the love that I'm ultimately designed for?
Yeah. Counterfeits the word.
Counterfeits the word.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what does a person do whose affections for junk food have overwhelmed their desire for health food. How do you choose your way away from junk food, away from the pretenders, and back to the thing that's healthy? I think is that something, ironically, your feelings don't naturally lead you there. Is that true?
It is. It's amazing. And I think this fits really well, but our feelings are so deceptive. And even to use that example, there will be this, before we've had the good food, the healthy, the fulfilling, nutritious food, something tells us that isn't what we want, and we just want to go to the cheesies. But for myself, when I'm able to, in that exact example, do what I know will be better for me, though my feelings aren't telling me that, after I've actually had it and I've tasted it and you can feel it and it's real and you know it.
Yes.
And on a broader scale, the example that comes to mind has just been this recurring thing that I've experienced now week after week. My wife and I host a community. There's a small group at our home. Yeah. And it has been a busy season for us, for Lauren and I. We've been renting the house forever, new jobs, lots on the go. And there's been a lot of exhaustion ultimately. And every Wednesday night it comes time for group, and there is so much within me kind of in those hours leading up that just wants to say, oh man, I don't know if I have this in me tonight. Like I really just wish I could just head home, flop on the couch, whatever. But week after week after week, I'm reminded firstly of just what Jesus says to, I think it's to Peter, the disciples, and they fall asleep in the garden. the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing.
Yeah.
And this promise that there is strength that the Spirit provides to allow us to walk and to follow Him.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gets me going, and I initiated that. But what has been so unbelievable to me week after week is we don't cancel group. We have everybody over. We do our thing, get into the Word, worship together, take communion. And from the second the first person walks in the door until long after they're gone into the next day, I feel infinitely better than I did all day long. And something in me wanted to avoid that.
Yeah.
And I was too tired and I couldn't do it. And that wasn't what I needed that day, is what I would have told myself. But every single week, it has been exactly what I needed. And I, for some reason, don't realize it until it's there.
I guess I can't know, what did it cost Jesus in the midst of each of those three temptations from the enemy? Like, what did it emotionally cost him? He's full of the Holy Spirit, right?
Right.
Spirit descends like a dove, immediately drives him out in the wilderness. He face off against the enemy.
Yeah.
What did it personally cost him? Like, in other words, if we use the junk food, healthy food, or the I don't feel like gathering with my community versus I did, the Holy Spirit, one of the and demonstration of the Spirit, of the fruit of the Spirit, is self-control, right? There's a control of the self nature that's happening by the Spirit of God, guiding us toward and into what God knows is best for us, both on His side of it and on our side of it.
Yeah.
Caleb, I know what actually is ultimately good for you.
Yeah.
And I know what I want for you, both sides of it. But in that moment, did Jesus kind of go, well, I kind of prefer the junk food? Like, he's perfect without sin, and yet he's human.
Yeah.
We don't need to speculate. The main point is the Spirit, that is a work the Spirit wants to do.
Yeah.
Right? And so something I can be conscious of, we're saying, okay, so neoliberalism, thought experiment, technology makes it possible, shop like a billionaire, and that's now the dream. What can I do? I can say no to atomization. That's a form of a lie. That's what's happening to human beings. That's not the trajectory God wants us to be on, neither for my sake, like for my well-being, or for the well-being of the people around me. I'm going to choose community. Yeah. I'm being seduced at mass scale. It's coming at me. It's feeding my emotions. It's seeking to, my emotions are being mined and monetized. I'm going to say no to that lie. And I'm going to choose what? Simplicity. I'm going to choose fasting sometimes. I'm just going to put it away. Say, no, you cannot mind me anymore. The real experience of being human is here with you and here with these people. I'm going to serve you. I'm going to serve others.
And training my emotions and my affections that they don't call these shots.
That's right. My cravings for cheesies are not in control. So there is a conscious thing, but it's also going to be a training of the emotions, because we're being taken on this ride daily. And it'll just keep on taking us on that ride unless we would say, no, but Jesus' way is, His is the most deeply satisfying, joyful, etc. Right? And, tackling that third one of exhaustion, we've talked about it before. Learn how to rest daily. Learn how to put it down. And we talked a little bit here about, like, I'm recognizing I'm just one person. I know the economy that's around me says, you're missing out on something. You're missing out on something. You should go after that. You should also try to consume that. You should also try to consume that. I'm going to say, no. Jesus, my shepherd, the one who knows me, He's the one who says, Tim, this would be enough for you today. Engage in these things. Engage with these 3 people, whatever it is. And that would be a more sustainable life. I don't want to be so flamed out from my over-engagement with this world that's being offered to me that I lose my own soul. You gain the world, but lose your soul, right? What did Jesus say? But neither do I want to be so exhausted that the only reaction I've got to my brother in Christ who'd say, come and let's participate in what Jesus wants to do. And I go, no, I just want to chill. I just want to tap out and chill. When you do that, the system has won.
And I think, it's natural and it happens to us so quickly, but I think it's trusting that faithfulness of God that He does indeed know. Because when Jesus says, come and I will give you rest, take my yoke upon you is what is going to bring us that rest. And so it's this thing that would appear as though it's going to be more work. And in the midst of all this we've got going, we say, I can't add another Jesus thing to the mix. I've got too much. But he promises, take my yoke upon you and I will give you rest. And
the world says you need all these opportunities. You need to be able to buy them all. You need to be able to access them all. That's how you'll be actualized as a human being. Jesus says, no, actually, I have these fewer things, these attached relationships, this one place, these few assignments. And you're going to find that in the rhythms of that is the most beautiful life there is.
Wow. And I pray that we would experience that today and that he would get glory for it. Amen. Well, thank you so much for talking, Tim.
Thank you.